Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining the Docker session. I think it's the last session of the day, right? So this is basically the last stop before beers and all the rest, right?
Oh my
Get
God.
it. So we got to finish very fast.
Yeah.
Half through, they're going to be like, okay, my beer is waiting downstairs. Guys, thank you again. Appreciate, first of all, I'd like to thank Etta to you for inviting us. Absolutely a pleasure being here, and the partnership we have with them is strong. So thank you to Dan and to the team for inviting Docker here to speak. Thank you very much. So Docker, before we start, just a quick intro so you guys know who's in front of you. I'm Bogdan, and I run the partner team, a partner and channel for EMEA and Latin America. I'm based here out of Timișoara. Moved back to Romania about 10 years ago. Lived somewhere else for pretty much my entire life, but 10 years ago I decided to move back and live in Romania, where I think it's a very beautiful and amazing country. And I have with me my colleague, Ari. Want to quickly introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Well, great to be back in Romania again. I was telling Bogdan, last time I was in Romania was almost 30 years ago. That being said, the taste of the tomatoes that I had when I was a kid still lingers in my mouth. So hopefully later this evening we'll get a chance to revisit that. But I'm Ari. I'm responsible for emerging markets at Docker. I'm based out of Stockholm, Sweden, and I travel a fair bit around Europe and Africa and Middle East as well. I've been with the company for coming up to 3 years, and typically working with our strategic clients, both across banking, government, retail, defense, etc. So yeah, great to be here.
Thank you, Ari. I don't want to burst your bubble, but tomatoes that you tasted 30 years ago and now, not the same. But hey, we're trying to level that up and trying to see where we can find those, that taste.
No pressure at all.
Excellent. So just before we start talking to you guys about Docker, Ari and I were curious. As Ari said, we travel across EMEA, talk to customers, partners, and obviously a lot of Docker users. But in the room here, is anyone familiar with Docker? Raise your hand. You know about Docker a little bit. Okay, great, excellent. It's actually a very good moment to where we are today in the company as Docker. But with 26 million users out there, most of the time when we do those presentations and talk about Docker, we have a lot of users and people like, yeah, I know Docker. What's surprising to us is they know Docker from probably 10, 15 years ago when Docker was founded, 17 years ago. But Docker has evolved a lot. Ari, you want to add?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the great thing about it is, on one side, people that use Docker, let's not go back all the way to the beginning, but say 10, 12 years ago, they have a perception of what Docker is. The exciting part of what we're doing now is that we're actually getting a lot closer to the engineers than we've ever been before. Docker as a platform has evolved. Docker as a company has radically evolved as well. And we'll go into that a little bit more, hopefully during this conversation. But hopefully by the end of the session today, we can leave you all with 3 things. One is Docker, where we're going, what we're focusing on, how we can be of value to you, and how you can take that back to your company. And then thirdly, some of the observations, trends we're seeing, in particular in this era of AI that we're in as well. I think it's great. I don't think we're going to produce less code and less applications, but the way we do that will have to be with security first. Let's put it at that.
You mentioned AI, right? First time I hear about this, so it's going to be fun to talk about. So the way we wanted to do this, and the way usually Ari and I do this, is very interactive. So yes, we're going to walk you guys through a few things that Docker is today, but we also wanted towards the end give you guys a possibility to ask us questions that may be from the presentation, but also in general from Docker, right? So hopefully it's going to be a really nice interactive session where you guys can participate. And not just you guys here and listening to 2 guys talking about Docker and so on, right? Let's make it fun. It's the last session. Then we all go back home, so let's make it an interesting one. Trip down memory lane.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one, Ari.
So for me, coming here was definitely a trip down memory lane, but I'm also cognizant, some of you, actually, let's flip it around. How many here have used Docker for 10 years? So going back to 2016, we've got two people, all right? Let's go 2020, 5-6 years. All right, fantastic. And who's actually using Docker on a daily basis? All right, fantastic.
Okay, good.
Fantastic. Well, I think here's the thing. Docker, when we started off focusing on the, on one side, building containerized applications and helping engineers to actually be more productive. At the heart of everything, it comes down to productivity. What we focused on then was not just about building applications, but it was also about shipping them, collaborating internally, and then move that into the runtime space. So things like, what is now Kubernetes. But the company has evolved a lot, and I kind of look at it as a way where Docker continuously has reinvented itself. I think the way we build software today is radically different to how we did things 10, 12 years ago. I remember the whole kind of structures you even had before of plan, build, test, run kind of setup, and now we've got DevOps, we've got DevSecOps, and variations of all of that. And if I look at how engineers are currently using tools and developing software today, it's not just about themselves. It's coding agents, it's AI, it's productivity. We have a lot of statistics, we have a lot of data, and what we're seeing is majority of the code that's actually being built nowadays is coming from these coding agents, which is great. But there's got to be a trade-off, right? What you get here, you probably have to compensate elsewhere. And we're seeing other observations. Open source continuing to be something companies are leaning on and double downing on. But again, what you get for free on one side, you got to pay on the other end. And that, for us, that we're observing, comes down to security, both around vulnerabilities being exploited, in the world of AI, how AI is actually causing attack vectors to increase. And I'm fairly sure over the last few weeks, you might have heard or even seen where AI agents have gone rogue and removed databases, they have gone in and removed customer data. So it's great on one side with AI, but on the other end of that, we still have a lot of work to do on how do we coexist with these agents and what's happening. So I'm curious, actually, if you don't mind, Bogdan,
sure.
Who's here, who's using any coding agents on a day-to-day basis here? Got a few people, all right. Cool. Yeah, we'll just temp check a little bit on that.
Yeah, you want to go next slide? Is it not playing?
I don't know, it doesn't look like it. So, by way of statistics, I mean, yes, I was a little bit impressed by seeing these numbers, but almost every single developer today is actually using some form of AI agent in the way they do things. Almost half the code is generated by AI. And over the next coming years, we'll certainly see more and more of this being shifted towards the AI side of things. All good and well, but as engineers, the focus will not just be about getting your agent to produce the code, but how do we actually fact check this? And one of the things that we're seeing more is, like I mentioned before, when we look at the adoption of open source, whilst that is increasing exponentially, we're also seeing vulnerabilities being exploited as well. These vulnerabilities, on average, is costing businesses $4.88 million per breach. And in some parts of the world, it goes even double that amount. What's for sure is, on one side, while we have AI producing code, we'll most likely also have AI being utilized to attack and find vulnerabilities as well. So the role of engineers will not just be about getting to code faster, but to securing things and starting early on and thinking about security.
Yeah, so basically, what you're saying to us out here is that Docker is not anymore just a dev tool, right? We've moved, it's our legacy product, it's what people know us for, Docker Desktop, Docker Hub, but we kind of moved past that with security and with AI. And one thing that caught my attention in the previous slide before with the numbers is that now we have more developers than you probably are expecting, meaning I became a developer. Maybe someone in your family became a developer, because now it's super easy, right? You go on chat, you go on Claude, and you just ask some stuff, and hey, can you write this? Can you get me this code? And now suddenly we have more developers. And what's frustrating for the developer is that those other developers are just people, mom and pop shop that learned a little bit how to work with agents, and now suddenly can start developing applications, can start developing all sort of things. So we now see an increase on the developer side, right? It's not people that are more not out of university and they know exactly what to do. It's just everyone that is a little bit playing with some agents, and suddenly they became a developer. And that's in a way not bad, but it's alarming, because now those workers, you have a secretary that runs an agent to run meetings for her team. And you have someone in finance that will launch a code through Claude and say, hey, can you get me a summary of the financial statement so I have that ready for my meeting tomorrow. And then you have someone in sales, like Ari and I, was like, hey, run a Salesforce report and go through all my meetings and get me a summary for the week so I can get that to my manager. So you have all people that are very well have very well intentions, but now suddenly open up all those information to the agent, and God knows what happened after. So Docker now, as I said, it's not just a dev tool. We've evolved into much more, and the security and AI becomes now a part of everyone's job in terms of IT. And Docker responded to that with the platform.
Yeah. And in a lot of ways, I think when you think of Docker, hopefully by the end of today, it's not just a company that stood in the way between the final session and beers, but instead as the actual one-stop shop for the future as well, all things development. Whether we're talking cloud-native development, whether we're talking going from monolithic to microservices, or even in this AI era that we're in, this is what Docker will focus on and is already focusing on. If I look at how we work with both forward-thinking companies and also, banks, telcos in the region, it's really around bridging the gap here. So how do we, on one side, roll out, because AI is not going to go away. Like, this is actually that one hype that I believe is here to stay. So it's not just a matter of rolling out. And if I look at other technologies that's been adopted, this is kind of like the wild, wild west, like we haven't seen before. Before, we used to have a lot more governance around enabling emerging technologies. There was a lot more control and governance. Whereas now, by default, everyone is using some form of AI. In our personal lives, that's cool. But when we're actually talking about business data, that's when things become more concerning. And by default, companies today that I'm speaking with, and even at government, they actually do not have any governance nor control over the use of AI, which is concerning. And it's kind of taking that shadow IT conversation we had maybe 10 years ago straight to top of mind again. So when we talk about AI and the Docker context, on one side, for those that are engineers in the room, it will help you to develop applications with AI functionalities. It will actually help you develop your own agentic AI and have environments that you can play around with. For those that are leaders in the room, this is going to be the point where you can safely roll this out with governance, with compliance, with security. And when we're talking about ISO 42001 or even still 27001, there are plenty of articles of that we can relate to and support you guys with as well. When we talk about responsible use of AI, we talk about governance, we talk about basic things, audit controls, RBAC, all of those kind of things. Currently, this has kind of been left out of the picture. And when I speak to CIOs and CTOs, they are actually being measured on how many of their engineers or the folks across the organization are using AI currently. So the incentive is actually get folks on board and use, like Bogdan mentioned, maybe it's Claude, maybe it's Cursor, maybe it's something else. And then we'll worry about any of the ramifications of that at a later stage. So you can imagine, there's never been a bigger disjoint between security, IT, and executives in the last, I would say, 15 years as we've got right now. So, yeah.
But it's very good what you're saying right now, because I have a couple of questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
You're mentioning security, right, and the gap between security, AI, executives, and all that. How is Docker responding to that in a security way with agents or just the development? Because you also said at the beginning of this presentation that the software supply chain and the build software has moved fast, right? So how is Docker responding to that?
Yeah. Look, one thing that I've learned over the years, engineers do not like any friction to the workflow. There's been plenty of studies related to how engineers want to keep this state of flow. And if you ask me, that productivity aspect is now Maslow's hierarchy of needs right at the top of it. How we do this is to actually work, where the engineers are. So engineers currently, if we look at it from a Docker standpoint, would use maybe Docker Hub to pull images from. What we're doing is go all the way left in this DevOps loop that you've got. So all the way left. So security actually is the first thing that comes. And the way we do that is on a number of different things. We have things like hardened images, which as a concept is relatively new. But what it does is it takes your node image, for instance, and we build it from scratch. And what we're doing is we're providing minimal images. They are free from vulnerabilities. We remove up to 90% of the packages, and then the images themselves are much smaller. Now, what it means for an engineer is, on one side, they can have the full trust and verification in what they are actually pulling is secure. It's something that is verifiable from source. But more importantly, it is a smaller image with fewer attack vectors that can be used when they go further into production. So that's a very, very easy way. And again, I'm not selling anything because this is actually free. So this is an easy way for engineers to just change one line of code to significantly improve the security posture. So when we talk about security from our end, it is actually right at the beginning before you do your first keystroke.
Okay, so what you're saying is yesterday developers used to go into the Docker Hub, download community images, and start building, right? That's what today what we're saying to the market is, why would you use a community image that's full of vulnerabilities? Use hardened images that are cleaned, managed by Docker, supported by Docker, maintained and all that by Docker, and you're going to start your development with a risk-free image, and it's free.
That is free. So here's the reality of this. Before we did all of this, I worked with clients, and I'll give you one concrete example. It was with a bank.
Okay.
And they had a bunch of scanners in place. They would use all the tools you can imagine in a way to, if you ask me, in a reactive way. They would be able to see the vulnerabilities we have at the point of development as they go into CI and later on in CD as well, to be able to see where vulnerabilities are. They would have some gates and policies. If it goes past a certain threshold, then engineers have to kind of go back again and remediate, patch, all of that. When they're actually in production, and we're talking about a bank here, if they had a vulnerability, it would take them, from point of detecting it, that was relatively quickly. But from going from point of detection to patching that vulnerability took them over 90 days. And we're talking about a bank. So for a bank to be exposed to a critical or high vulnerability for 90 days, this is not an IT risk anymore. This is actually detrimental to the business. It impacts customer experience. It impacts loyalty. So it's not just a case of, a technology shift. It's actually more about how do we gain customer trust? How do we maintain that investment and trust they've made with us? So we went, in their case, from 90 days down to 7 days. And that delta in, remediation has put a lot more trust on the engineers to do what they should be doing instead. So instead of patching, they can actually go back into building. And from a competitive standpoint, they are actually now releasing software which is more on par with a fintech kind of company. So this is kind of the net of that. And the way of getting there, again, it's free. It's just one line of code that you change, and that saves engineers hours a week. And then you multiply that across thousands of engineers, and very quickly you realize that it's actually not a bad thing.
Good, excellent. So now we've secured the hardened images, we've secured the left side. So now engineers can start developing with the hardened images instead of the community images. But now comes the AI, right? So everyone's talking about AI. And the only thing you hear is AI, and can you make this AI and this, and people, as you said, get incentivized just to use AI, but there's whatever happens after, we'll deal with after, right? So how is Docker answering this AI era that everyone's in? And as you said, and I agree with you, it's not a wave or something that will eventually in 5 years disappear. I think it's just getting worse and worse, or better and better, depending how you guys see it. But how are we, Docker, answering that?
Yeah, so I think two things. First and foremost, about the AI. Look, I'm a techno geek myself, so my glasses are the Meta Oakley ones with AI built in and camera. I absolutely love it. So having that, again, embedded into our day-to-day lives, even as consumers, fantastic. As a consumer, I kind of already know that, a company like Meta, they've already got all my data points going back to 2007 when I first started using their services, and across multiple products that they have. From a Docker standpoint, on the other hand, what we're really trying to do here is provide an architecture for where, on one side, the development of AI can be done in a secure way. On the other side of it, it's also around putting some structure to the chaos. So right now, you have all these different vendors out there. You have all these different tools. No real way to know who's doing what, how far do their tentacles actually reach. And of course, we've seen examples. From Docker, what we're doing is we're creating an AI module within the Docker platform, which on one side helps companies to set their policies on trusted content. So again, the concept of minimal images, we take that into the world of MCPs, which is another way of connecting AI services together, where each of these servers are minimal. And we also look at it from an agentic standpoint. How do we allow agents to operate freely within things like a sandbox? And it's not just about having the sandbox, it's about everything else that sits on top of it. The governance, the things that are often forgotten. So policies, how do we manage that? When we have new engineers coming in, how quickly can we actually onboard them into using this? And then when they're up and running, we'll provide a safe place for agents to run without their tentacles reaching into production, reaching into critical data sources. And this is where we're seeing, at least from my side, I'm seeing in emerging markets, the most desirable thing to address, which is how do we make this secure? Because we can't stop the rollout of AI now. That's not going to happen. It's here, it's staying, it's got to coexist with us. So instead, what we need to do and what companies are focusing on is, this is the reality, how do we actually, provide some wrappers around it. So if a blast happens, that radius is actually contained not just at an engineering level, but even at a corporate level as well. So we're reducing our risk exposure to the capabilities of how far the AI reaches.
Everyone, I'm giving an example. A company runs all the agents possible. Mm-hmm. Employees, finance, HR, developers run agents over agents. How do we secure that? So I got the part with hardened images and all that and everything you said, but how do I secure my agent? Or how do I make sure I'm a C-level at a company, that everyone in the company is, whatever they're doing with agents, I feel secure. I'm like, okay, they have my blessing. Yeah, they can run Claude and ChatGPT and Gemini and whatever, right? How do I make sure that this is really secure and not go and delete my database? Even if I specify to Claude, please do not delete my database, they go in and delete the database. Or you download the little Chrome extension of Claude and suddenly they have access to your doesn't matter, presentation, meeting notes, that it was just to you, not to everyone else. How do I make sure that this doesn't happen?
Yeah. So here's the thing, from an architectural standpoint, we look at it from 3 angles. Right at the bottom, it's looking at the foundation. We spoke a little bit about hardened images, and in the world of AI, if we're looking at MCPs, we take the same concept. We secure the MCP servers. And then we'll look at more how do we actually harden even the pipelines. So everything across that early stage of building and that foundation, for that to be secured. Hardened, full visibility and auditability in how things are built. And then on top of that, we put in things around insights into the vulnerabilities. So in real time, people can actually see what's our risk exposure, how many vulnerabilities do we have, how do we actually go on about patching that. So that's at the very, very basic level of that. Then we get one step up, and that's where, in my opinion, that's where it gets interesting, because no one's right now focusing on governance. This might be the most boring part of AI, when you've got Claude, you've got Cursor, you've got Replit that actually produces standalone applications for you, but no one is actually taking the boring stuff and bringing it to front of mind. What we're doing here is looking at it from the governance standpoint. How do we control? How do we put observability into what these agents are doing? And how do we make sure that we have the ability to audit what's happening? So that middle layer, if you ask me, that's where the most exciting things are happening. Everything else is actually what we've already seen. We've already experienced it. But that middle layer, in particular for organizations, that's the game changer. Being able then to have not just control of your agents, but also being able to build your own library of trusted content, trusted AI agents, vendors that we actually have relationships with, and then at the later stage of that governance layer, go one step further and looking at what policies do we actually set in place here. How do we, leading up to an ISO 42001 audit, how do we actually be able to trace that back into what people are using and show the regulators that, hey, we've got control over this. So that part there in the middle, I think that's the most exciting piece. And then right at the top of it, that's when we start looking more at the engineering interface and what engineers would interact with on a day-to-day basis. The middle layer sits kind of in the background, and it's nothing that is visible in that regard. But then you look at it. If you want to run things like sandboxes, how do we roll this out across a community of 4, 5, 15,000 engineers so they can do this in a safe manner, and we can actually trust that whatever they put in there in God mode or YOLO mode can actually just be contained in that regard. But I'm also cognizant, everyone is not just focusing on that local experience. More and more is kind of moving into the cloud, and how do we maintain the same posture, the same policies, the same governance, even in a cloud setup. So we're kind of having this approach where we have a hybrid, remote, as we call it, which is both remote in the cloud and then local as well. But all these capabilities, all these, insurances, actually extends from your local experience to the cloud and back, and being able to do this across a whole engineering community for a company or even a government, to be honest. So yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So you secure the foundation, do the boring stuff, like you said.
Yep.
And then with the Sandboxes, local cloud, you're securing pretty much the whole layer of agents. So now I'm a company and I'm using this. I can securely say, well, hey, my employees, doesn't matter if you run agents, I know they have guardrails around, and no one's going to go delete data, no one's going to go expose data because it stays in that little box, sandbox. Is right?
Correct.
Excellent.
Correct.
Super. If you can maybe give us all here an example of, through your accounts, how does that relate to, let's say, banking, right? Yeah. Banking, high regulated, I mean, everywhere in the world, but even more in Europe here, you know, with GDPR and God knows, and NIS2 and DORA and so on. What's the feedback they give you, or more, what are the challenges you see when you talk to your customers in the banking industry related to that? Yeah.
I mean, not too far away from where we are right now. We work with a bank. They had started rolling out, MCPs from GitHub with Copilot, and the initial phase of that was fantastic. At a leadership level, at a board level, they could actually say that we're moving into becoming more of an AI native or a more AI coexistent bank, which was fantastic. Until an audit happened, and there very quickly things became not as positive anymore. It came to the point where we cannot, as a bank, guarantee where this data goes. And when we talk about regulations, and in particular in Europe now, you've got things like DORA happening. I don't know, do we have any bankers in the room? Anyone from banking here? No? Then we can skip the banking example and go to telco instead, which is equally regulated and equally of critical infrastructure. But similar scenario we've had there as well, but what we're seeing more and more is how do we ensure and demonstrate to the regulators how to do this in a security way. So the regulatory stuff doesn't change, regardless if you're a bank, if you're a telco, if you're a retailer, or a healthcare provider. What is going to happen is the number of vulnerabilities will only increase with AI and through AI. And what companies need to emphasize on is how do we balance on one side the great things we get from it, be it productivity, be it ability to develop faster, or detecting things faster. And on the other side is we have to also think about the code that we get from AI will be more likely to contain vulnerabilities or pulling images and things that we don't necessarily have any say in. So kind of tying those in together, I think it's the critical thing. And regardless, like I said, if you're a bank or government, these are the questions in AI any executive right now will think of. So yeah, I'm not sure, Bogdan, if that answered the question, but just some thoughts around what I'm observing.
Okay, that's good. We would like to give you guys a chance to ask us questions about Docker. Majority of you know Docker, using Docker. Is there anything wasn't clear or any questions you guys want to ask us?
From where can you download Hardened images?
So you go on, it's on the hub, it's on the Docker hub.
The Docker hub.
Yeah. So
All images.
all images. So it's a Hardened imaging catalog. It's out there. If you log in into your account on Hub, you're going to see Docker Hardened image catalog, and you're going to see all the images that are there. I don't know, over 600. We're going to get to 1,000. We're basically, what we're doing, we're pulling all our, it's Docker Hub, it's ours. We're pulling all the most downloaded images worldwide, like from what users are downloading, and the 1,000 one that are most downloaded, we're going to harden them. and maintain them, of course, right? So this was, so starting last November, we made it open source, so it's free for everyone to use. What we're saying to the community, to our 26 million users, is you should start using Docker hardened images instead of community images. Now, do you want you work for a bank or highly regulated industry? Obviously, there is an enterprise version, but the catalog is free of charge. Okay, so you can see here all the versions. You can also customize your images. So if you want to use Node 10.1 instead of 10.3 or whatever, you can customize them as well, right? So there's also you can bring your image in a way, and then we can harden that image. That's part of the customized packages that we offer. So it's not just a image as it is, and you take it and that's it. You can build the image yourself and make it according to your environment. Anything to add, Aaron?
No, I think just keep in mind, right? I mean, before, if you were to go with an official image, this is a real life example, right? You go from 141 vulnerabilities to 0. More importantly, the packages within that image goes from 748 down to 12. So regardless of if you're doing things in production, I mean, I've even for my home automation system, I've moved over to this, not because I'm worried about someone hacking into my home automation, but it's smaller in size. It's one line of code that I change, and I'm reducing my vulnerabilities. It doesn't cost me anything. So yeah, it kind of takes to that point of security being first. I think the gentleman there had a question to ask, so. Very good question.
Regarding the way you are hardening the images, and of course, you already mentioned that the community can also push other images, and I suppose people will do this from time to time.
Yeah, it's a very good question. I don't know if you have a security background. Perfect. So here's the thing. When we look at the hardened images, there are a couple of things. On one side, this is based on open container standards. It's an OCI compliant. If we take that one step further, when we look at the scanning part of it, it's an OCI container. So you can use Trivy, you can use Docker Scout, ECR scanner, Sneak, Wiz, whatever scanning would be there. When we talk about the point I think you made earlier around, how do we ensure things? That's where you have the VEX statements and the full auditability. It's called SALSA level 3. And with that, it will show you from each level of the image composition how it's been built from source. And it will give you the metadata, so you can actually go back and do that as well. So from that standpoint, we are a completely open book. This is not locked to anything. It's widely available to open standards. And regardless if we're talking Debian or an Alpine, it's still the same experience that it covers off. I hope that answers the questions. And
Answers because I was curious. You mentioned already Trivy, and of course, I suppose you are aware that they had a...
Yep, there was a breach. Yep.
Breach, really
Yep.
important breach. So I would like us to be a little bit less boldly when we are saying zero vulnerabilities, because you are using also yourself somebody in the supply chain.
Absolutely.
So this means that the attack surface is wider than...
Absolutely. You're spot on. And when we detected the breach in Trivy, we remediated that within 2 days. So the point isn't that it's forever zero vulnerabilities, but it's zero vulnerabilities. If anything is detected, we will remediate it, guaranteed within 7 days, right? And then when we talk about connecting to other scanners, Docker Scout itself is a scanner, and it connects to 13 of the globally known vulnerability databases as well. So again, it's kind of like bring your own scanner to that.
My question is in addition to that,
Sure.
because we're discussing about AI and vulnerabilities.
Yep.
What do you think about the mythos from Anthropic?
Yeah.
And how do you think the Docker security will be influenced by it?
I think Mythos is on one side amazing. On the other side, it's actually quite scary.
That's why I asked.
Yeah. From our standpoint, the architecture that I showed before, it's going to be exactly the same thing. So you could actually govern it, you can secure it, and block its perimeters, if you may, without it actually breaching any of that. So the blockage will share both so architecturally speaking, the sandbox is, it sits in a micro VM. So the layers of security to it is solid. But with its capabilities of Mythos, we still govern it. Yeah, we'll govern that, and we're doing a lot of current validations with our clients to show it. We've done it internally, and we've shown how it works and how it's securing it. Now we've got clients doing the same thing.
Question there?
Yeah.
You had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to maybe no vulnerabilities should be no vulnerabilities detected.
Yeah, I
To
mean,
make it clear, right? So there are no vulnerabilities.
No. It's never a case of forever zero vulnerability. It's a case of at this point in time, when you pull it, there's zero vulnerabilities. If you put it into production and vulnerabilities are detected, you will get the detection from Docker Scout. You will get it from your own scanner that you put in place as well. Now, the magic isn't the zero vulnerabilities. On one side, that's good and well, but again, it's a matter of time before things are being exploited. And for enterprises, the value of these minimal images and hardened images are that the attack vectors are smaller. So when something happens, we kind of know exactly. It might be from a wget. It might be that you've added a certificate. Whatever it might be, we're able to detect that. And then for those that are looking to pay for this service, they will be guaranteed an SLA within 7 days.
And of course, it's going to be harder for the people that will try to exploit to work with the hardened images.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. So I think here's the lag. I think this is, with hardened images, we're kind of looking at a year and a bit of age that it's been out there. To Bogdan's point, about 6 months ago, we actually made this completely free. So I think hopefully next year, this time around when we're here, we should be able to hopefully give some statistics on the images that's been available in Docker Hub. Pre-hardened images and post-hardened images generally have a lower vulnerability, and for the engineers, the images that they've pulled or the containers that they've built have reduced their security exposure over the years. So yeah, I don't know, you had a question there as well?
Yeah, you mentioned that Docker basically takes the 1,000 most popular images and hardens them. How do you ensure that those images are perfectly and fully functional compared to the community images, especially for dynamic language-based images like Python or
Yeah.
JavaScript, Node.js, whatever,
Yeah.
which are, the only way to actually ensure such a thing, especially running multi-clients in every single scenario.
Absolutely. We have a whole machinery back end that actually does that. There are, of course, aspects where you have new versions that may not be compatible with your application. So going from an old version to a new version to reduce vulnerabilities may not necessarily always be the answer. In those scenarios, we're actually having an extended life cycle support. So even legacy versions will get patched and remediated. Behind the scenes, we do a lot of scanning, and we use not just Docker Scout, we use any and all tools that you can imagine to demonstrate, on one side, seeing what you guys are seeing, but then behind the scenes, that whole factory of building and testing and ensuring functionality is there. When we release something that the community hasn't done, we then release it out to the community as well, typically within a 90-day window. That answers the question? Not really? Okay. Rephrase it. Maybe I missed it.
I was asking about ensuring the base functionality of the image that you give, especially for dynamic languages, because that's quite a difficult task to do, especially for Python. You'll never know when it's actually functioning properly until you actually encounter certain issues that you might not have seen before, because sometimes so many works are being done sometime at the runtime. You'll never know why, but it will be.
So, we do extensive Q&A internally before it's released. When we build the minimal images, we take away things that you don't necessarily need in production. It might be SSH, it might be any other things, but we do extensive testing ourselves before it's out there, so yeah.
Any other questions?
Do you have an integration way to notify new versions, like with Thunderbolt or something similar?
We can set it up, yeah. It's nothing that is native in the platform, but you can set it up with any webhooks or anything like that, and you can get notified.
But you don't have, at this moment, you don't have a GitHub action or something similar already there to check for the new versions?
No, not natively, but this works in CI, so you can still have GitHub performing those tasks as well. At a later stage, we're looking at adding that to the awareness to the users as well. Cool.
Well, thank you, everyone. We just got a stop sign saying the beer is waiting downstairs, so appreciate everyone. Hope you guys have a better idea what Docker is today, not just a dev tool. If you want to engage with us, really having demos around the Hardened images, demos around Sandbox and our AI platform, just reach out to us. We're probably going to reach out to you guys just to a quick email saying thank you for the session. But engage with us. We can show you the tool. We can show you more around Docker. This was just a high-level overview of who we are today, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it and got value out of it. Thank you.